Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another third stimulus check unemployment benefits extension update. So today's gonna come as a little bit of a harder news to share, and some of you guys may or may not already know this. Now, granted, information is moving very fast, but there are now actually has officially been 3 states that have recently just announced that they are now leaning to end their unemployment benefits extension program in its entirety. This basically means almost every single kind of unemployment is potentially going to end. I believe that those 3 specific states right now are Montana, South Carolina, and Arkansas. Now, the great news is that if you are not from one of those states, then you should likely be safe for now, at least certainly for now. The little bit harder news is that if you do happen to be from one of those 3 states, then it's going to be very hard news to take in. Now, another big thing to notice is that there are now actually a couple of other states that are likely, they haven't really announced anything, so that's the great news about it, but because there are now officially 3 states that have announced intentions that they're going to be basically ending their unemployment relatively earlier than they had anticipated from the September 2021 deadline that most of us had believed, there is a lot of belief and speculation that there may even be more states now that might be following. So in today's update, I really just want to talk about that because you might have already seen other videos about that, or you might have already heard, but granted, it's moving really, really fast. For example, I think Montana announced right around the middle of last week. I think South Carolina was shortly after, and Arkansas announced, I'm pretty sure, over this weekend. So because of that reason, it's moving really, really, really fast. But I basically just want to talk today a little bit about what exactly is going on, why they're specifically doing this, and then the likelihood of what states might potentially be following up and even be the next on the next target to possibly having their unemployment end. But we're going to talk all about that in today's video. But as always, before we begin, make sure you smash the like button if you guys hopefully find videos similar to this insightful, even though I know it might be hard news, so you guys can decide if you guys want to, and consider subscribing if you guys are interested in future videos like this, especially because since we are getting a lot of news over the next couple of days, so you guys can hopefully maybe find out when those things come out. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly just really anything at all, or honestly if you maybe had some kind of opinion about what you currently think about the situation, because I think that there's definitely a lot of things that are happening and a lot of things that have to be said. So feel free honestly to share really anything at any time at all. So with that being said, let's get this video started. Now, I do really want to clarify is because last week we did talk a little bit about how there are now supposedly about 33 states that might be seeing their unemployment end partially soon. Now, that specific reasoning to why those people are going to be having their unemployment end is totally separate from why some people will be seeing their unemployment end in today's video. Last week's video, we talked a little bit about that. Some people know, but just a massive, huge recap in case you are brand new here. Welcome, always happy to have new people. We talked basically about how there are 33 states that might potentially see some people having their unemployment end. This one though, that video has a lot more to do specifically about the Fed trigger system with the unemployment rate. If this sounds very confusing, I highly recommend checking that video out, because that obviously might apply to more people, because that's 33 states after all, as opposed to 3 in this video. I'll put that at the very quick end screen, so you guys can definitely check that out, because the great news about that is that one, there actually is a solution to protect yourself from potentially having to lose your unemployment if that ends up applying to you. So what really ended up happening is, as some of you guys know, is that last week we recently received the April jobs report. Long story short about that is that a lot of people, specifically a lot of the politicians and people in Congress, they weren't particularly happy about it. And I think that one of the biggest concerns is that according to them, what they've basically expressed is that they feel that there's a lot of companies and employers right now that are struggling to find workers to physically hire. And they believe that one of the reasons why is because some of them believe that the unemployment program they currently have right now is preventing a lot of people from wanting to go back to work. So as a result, there are now specifically 3 states, which, as we just mentioned, mentioned. Montana specifically, I believe Montana was the first one. South Carolina followed after, and then Arkansas just announced, like literally over the weekend, that they are now planning to end the unemployment program in its entirety. This basically means every single kind of unemployment program, whether this is the PUA, the PUC, the $300 boost, all of it, basically in its entirety. Now, if I had to comment my personal opinion, again, now this part is just my personal insight about that is that I think really the biggest problem that's going on right now is that, as some of you guys know, is that we are now going through something called a K-shaped recovery. What that is that in very simple terms it's basically an economy where essentially you have half of the people inside of a particular country, or half of the industries, actually doing really, really well. As some of you guys know, is that some industries actually benefited last year. If you happen to be in the tech industry, anything that involves like tech, remote learning, Zoom, a lot of tech companies, they basically actually got even richer last year. But if you happen to be in certain industries like hospitality, travel, a lot of industries that involve working directly with people, then you probably were in some kind of industry that struggled last year. I feel it because, as some of you guys know, is I work in the film and events industry, so you can only imagine basically everyone in my industry, essentially, we kind of went out of work after what happened last year. But the problem right now is that because we're seeing kind of a K-shaped recovery, a lot of politicians believe, specifically the politicians that are trying to end the unemployment, they believe that they want to basically end the program, hoping that it'll incentivize people to potentially now go back to work. I think that the biggest problem though is that, this is my personal opinion, is that even though there are a lot of jobs obviously that are maybe empty and that are vacant and they need to try to fill up, the problem is that to this day, there are still a lot of jobs that have basically been lost completely because of all of the businesses that have shut down. So the problem is that there aren't physically enough jobs to physically go around. So an example of this, like imagine if you have a place where there's like 1 million people unemployed and then there's like 800,000 job openings. It means that there physically isn't enough to basically cover. Now the bright news is that there actually are many jobs that are now reopening up again, so that probably is partially true in the sense that there are jobs that are now starting to hire. But then the other problem I think that people really have to consider is that just because there's a lot of open positions, it doesn't necessarily mean that the people that are looking for the jobs are able to necessarily connect or be qualified for the jobs that are physically out there. So what I mean by that is that it's very possible that you may have 1 million people that are looking for work, but that there are 800,000 people or 800,000 job openings. But then the problem is, it doesn't mean that you can necessarily match every worker to every single job, because you might end up having a job, for example, that involves incredibly advanced tech skills or involves like some kind of 8-year degree, medical school, or anything in the healthcare, or like a law degree of some kind. But then the problem is that just because of that reason, it doesn't necessarily mean that the people within that pool of 1 million people to choose from are actually even able to physically qualify. So what's going on is that there's a little bit of a disconnect, because you might have cases where maybe there's 1 million people unemployed, but the majority of them happen to be unemployed with background experience in things like hospitality, but a lot of the other jobs that people are physically looking for are in things like construction. So because of that reason, it can be actually really difficult to not just be able to find workers, but to be able to actually find workers to connect them with actually the right jobs, and also the jobs that are actually relatively high paying and maybe worth it to go back to. This is actually even more true because the minimum wage program that some of you guys know that we've been talking around, maybe consider subscribing if you guys haven't done so already, it never got approved. So I think that that's also been a massive concern, because many people still feel that they don't feel it's fully safe to go back, or they don't feel it's financially worth it to be able to go back because of what's going on. And that's really the motivation and reasoning to why they're doing what they're currently doing. But feel free maybe to share any comments or thoughts if you guys have anything, because obviously there's a lot of mixed belief to what's going on right now. Now, when it comes to what states are probably going to be the next ones to follow follow and potentially end their unemployment, most people speculate at this time that it probably is going to depend a lot more on your state, but specifically about what the senators who represent your particular state believe. Because keep in mind is that when we approved the third stimulus package, which thankfully it finally got approved a couple months ago, when it came to the actual tallies and the official votes, keep in mind is that 50 senators said yes, which is the really, really great news, but then 50 senators said no. So the likelihood is, in terms of whether or not your state is going to be likely the next one or not, is that it actually probably depends a lot more on the senators that represent your state and whether or not your senator was someone that supported or not supported the specific program. Because keep in mind that because there were 50 senators that did not vote in favor of the program, it probably means that if you happen to come from one of those states, then your senator is more likely to possibly now try to push to end the unemployment program in its entirety in your state. Now, if you happen to come from a state that maybe actually did really support the unemployment program, or actually has a particularly very high amount of unemployment, then it means that you're more likely to be safe. But I think at the end of the day is that at this time, regardless of your state, I think it's important to just be on guard. And I think that the one general news is that most of these programs, the states that do announce this, they're probably going to be ending it right around the very end of June. So you still kind of have about 2 months to maybe try to sort things out. But I just figured that it's important to share, even if it might be hard news to take in. But that's pretty much what I really just wanted to share in today's update. So if you guys maybe found that insightful, consider maybe smashing the like button. Even though I know it might be difficult news, you guys can decide. Consider subscribing for future updates on this, especially as we get more news. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly just really anything at all. Even more true, maybe if you've received any particular information from your specific state announcing anything about honestly just anything related at all. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.